we forget to focus on the big picture. We were reminded of the big picture when it was announced this week that international broadcasting, basically the entities that we oversee here, reached 187 million people every week in 2011, and that's an increase of 22 million from last year's figure. And this is, shows, that we're having an impact. Bruce, why is that, by the way?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we've had very significant increases in a number of strategically important countries, including Egypt, Afghanistan, Indonesia. We've sustained very strong performance in a host of other strategically important countries, such as Nigeria and Burma and many others. Very strong performance across the board. Each of our broadcasting services was up year over year. And so we've had, in the face of what we all recognize is very tough international competition, we have nonetheless been able, through innovation, to be very successful and grow our audience and our impact.
Victor and I were just talking in the corner. You may think we were talking about all sorts of minor matters, about some of the awards, because we keep getting emails about AIB and other awards. Maybe the entity heads could remind us of some of these awards that I know, David, you had a few? Or
there were a number of awards given, yes, sir.
Yeah, and was there a couple that, I don't know, a couple we got emails on that were particularly impressive to me, the International Broadcasting Award. That was you all, Brian, yeah.
I was saving that for my board report.
I know, but I'm vamping until Ann comes back, so you have to help me vamp.
Yes, we received, Al-Hurra received the People's Choice Award. The People's Choice Award from AIB last week in London. Yeah. And later,
that was one in the AIB, yeah.
The AIB. I think some other entities won some too. We'll show you the video that was our entry in a little while.
And David, speaking of the upsides, there's also the downsides. You have a problem in Angola? Was there was a reporter?
There's harassment of a journalist that's pretty serious, and obviously this is not the first time in Angola. So we're tracking that one very closely.
All right, Victor, do you want to?
David, didn't you mention to us earlier? But I think we decided we wanted to be a little more public about it. At the problem we're having in securing a visa for one of our employees to go to Beijing.
Yes, sir. It's been close to 3.5 months now that we've been asking the People's Republic of China for a visa for one of our 2 journalist postings in Beijing. And this comes at a time when the Chinese government's state television and radio has received, well, just in those 3.5 months, many visas from the United States. So it is a problem. We will be raising with our colleagues at the State Department whether there's anything they can do to help us to try to obtain this visa.
Well, let me say, Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Enser is exactly right, and it's certainly highly unfair and an absence of reciprocity when the Chinese government sends over 100 correspondents to the United States that we willingly give visas to. This visa, as I understand it, is simply to replace one person who has retired, a Chinese American, returned to the United States, and of course, if the policy of the Chinese government is simply to put VOA out of existence through attrition and simply not allow replacements to come in, that's not a bad policy, but at least we ought to make. That is, from their standpoint, it's a bad policy from our standpoint, but it certainly contradicts the notion of freedom of the press, freedom of media. And I think the State Department hopefully will be very aggressive and very active in bringing to the Chinese ambassador's attention here in the United States, as well as in Beijing through Ambassador Gary Locke, how we feel about it, and that this is no way to behave. And of course, actually, VOA at least has somebody in China. RFA, Radio Free Asia, is basically barred
and I think
China.
both those should be said. By the way, maybe Jeff, if you could frame what Victor just said into a motion that Victor would make, and I would second it, if Victor would permit that.
I'd be more than happy.
That it's a consensus of this board that we go on record as
Would you call for the Chinese government as quickly as possible to issue a visa to this journalist to allow VOA to continue its coverage of China from inside that country.
Did you want to add Libya?
Well, and I would say not just one journalist, but journalists measure it with the number of Chinese journalists that are here in the United States.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
We also have a standing request to be allowed to bring a journalist in to be based in Shanghai. So we would actually like to go up from 2 slots to 3. As I say, the Chinese state institutions have hundreds of journalists here.
Well, I would make that in the form of motion as you.
Right. And we'll let Jeff
Right.
phrase the motion with Paul and your approval later, but I second what would be the phrased motion. And do I, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're on the record that. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Anne. I don't know what to be hoping for, because Tar is a friend of mine. Tar Sunshine has been nominated to be undersecretary, and you're interim acting, right? Who knows if the Senate will act, but we may not see you at the next meeting. But you're always, having served on this board, an honorary member of this board, and we really wish you well. You'll still be running the Education and Cultural Affairs Bureau, which is one of the coolest in the State Department. So you'll still be near and dear to our heart, and I hope working with us.
And thank you for the opportunity. It's been a true joy to be here. And also, I'll work with Tara, and we'll just continue forward with the really good relationship that we had. And thank you again for having me. It's been a delight.
Well, great. It's been wonderful. There's the minutes in the meeting, and I think Victor's probably already looked them over. But is there a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion, amendments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Do we want to go into...
There is no governance committee reports for the budget status, Mary Jean.
Right, just the budget status, which we didn't do before, and I'm glad we didn't do it before because we would have heard it twice.
That's right. Actually, I have 2 items to report on. One will be the budget status, and then talking about the performance and accountability report. So I'll start with the budget status. Our current CR expires at midnight tonight, and we do not have another bill. The next CR we're expecting is to run through December 16th. If you recall, as I reported earlier, that Congress was trying to pass spending bills through a series of small packages called minibuses as opposed to an omnibus. And the first one is actually passed, but which is where our CR will be attached to. But our minibus has stalled in the Congress, and what they're now looking at is passing.
When you say ours, you mean the foreign ops?
Right, the bill that contained the state and foreign operations piece of it, along with some other bills. But it's stalled in the Congress, and now what they're looking at is doing a 9-bill omnibus for all the remaining bills, and we'll kind of see where that goes. Reports are that they're looking to get it passed before the 16th. So we'll see what happens, and as always, I'll keep you posted on that. Quick note on fiscal year 13. Passback, which is usually the Monday after Thanksgiving, this year it could be a little bit later in the week. That's just breaking news from OMB. But we'll keep you posted on that. If the numbers are pretty good, we may or may not need to confer with the board, and I'll do it via email as I did last year. If there are some issues, then we may have to have a call with the board, and we'll keep you posted on that. Until I know what the numbers are and what's contained in it, I just don't know. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Victor? I'm sorry, you were leaning forward, I thought. But I say Victor because there were times we didn't have the numbers in time. I know passbacks happen all at once, but Victor has made the point correctly that we should get the information on paper in timely fashion, and especially if you want to give people who want a briefing, separate briefings. If Victor or myself or anybody want it, we should do it.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. What generally happens in passback is they will give us a number, and then we have a deadline. And it's a very short deadline. Sometimes, I've had passbacks that have actually been a couple hours, and that's,
Well, I'm sort of saying this so other board members will understand when they say, why did you do the passback and we didn't get a week to see it, that they give you 2 hours to
Sometimes,
comment on the pass back, but keep everybody as informed as possible,
Absolutely.
if you would. Bruce, I preempted you a bit by asking you to talk about the audience numbers, but do you have more on that or on the strategic review, please?
No, I think the numbers speak for themselves, Mr. Chairman, and just to note again that fortunately, in very difficult global media circumstances, very tough competition, we've managed to continue to thrive, and that's just a very good note. And salute to all of our broadcasters, because as I said before, we're up across the board.
And the rollout of the strategic review, how's that been going?
It's been going very well. The strategic plan, we have, of course, at the board's direction, we've been as transparent as possible on that, rolled it out to all employees. We have the bbgstrategy.com site set up for employee feedback to provide additional details. I was in Miami this week at Carlos Garcia's invitation to brief in person the employees of OCB. We were in Prague last week at Steve Korn's invitation, discussed with senior management there the plan. We have also answered further questions from the Hill. We've been briefing outside parties. Jeff and I gave a briefing day before yesterday to the Public Diplomacy Council here in Washington. So we've been reaching inside and outside the organization. I would also note that we had an hour and 15-minute question and answer session with the Federal Employee Union here yesterday. So we've been very active in communicating the plan and taking questions.
Victor?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, let me commend Mr. Sherman and others for the effort to do outreach and to discuss this as it moves forward. I do think there's an additional step that underlies all of this that we should take, and which is, I think, the Deloitte report as well as the legal report on the feasibility that we spent over an hour and a half discussing today should be placed on our website and made public. That is the basis upon which we're making considerations, and even though it says pre-decisional or not for distribution, I don't know who made that. The board didn't make that decision, but this is something we're all talking about, and I see no reason not to share it with the people who the taxpayers paid for this. And I would consider a motion that we move forward and release
actually,
it.
I think I agree with you, but I would. I'd love to have our first round of consultations, and also with the both legal and everything else, and even with the communications committee, like who on the Hill might want to get it. Is there any? Let's discuss this for a second, because I'm not, and we're an open meeting, so obviously the whole web is seeing this. I'm not trying to be secretive about it, but we have a whole lot of numbers and facts and figures in there that maybe we ought to share sequentially. But we've been very open about this process. Do you have any thoughts, Paul or Marianne? I mean, as I say, we're in open session now. So.
Mr. Chairman, just very briefly, you would waive any attorney-client privilege with respect to those documents, including the legal report, if it were placed on the website.
Well, we are the client. If the board wants to do it, we can release it.
You're absolutely correct,
yeah, but the question is whether if we
can you expand upon that a little bit more?
Yeah.
I mean, can you expand upon what that means? I mean, what are the pros and cons of waiving our attorney-client privilege in this?
It just means that there would be no way to prevent any further public distribution, so you couldn't be selective about it. It would be under any circumstances, whether it's FOIA, there wouldn't be an exemption on FOIA. Anyone who wanted the document could get it.
I guess if it's on our website, that would be true by definition, although sometimes I worry about our website. It might be the best place to hide things. Sorry, that was a joke. Each of the entities' websites are great.
There's an element of truth in your joke.
Yeah. Is there any other considerations we should make on this, Jeff?
I would say only that as the financial information in the Deloitte report is to some extent predicated on the board's 2013 budget proposal, and that itself is pre-decisional and embargoed until the release of the president's budget, that we might need to redact it a little bit.
Can we redact it and leave out what are things that have not yet been decided by the president?
Correct. I think that's.
I think instead of fully deciding this now, we should try to be as open as possible. Yeah. And why don't you put the report up as you can? But if there are numbers in it that are not yet, real numbers, that can be problematic, putting in numbers that then the White House puts in other numbers, and then everybody says why. So, but we want people to know about this, and I think it's generally a good thing. So without further ado, we'll just get this done in the next couple of days or get back to the board about why it can't be done.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, let me say I appreciate your attitude and thoughts on it. There's nothing in here that's national security or classified or anything of that nature. I have no problem with redacting what you might have to redact for OMB purposes. I don't particularly agree with it, but I realize that's the life, and you have to accept it.
Yeah, there is a law on the pre-decisional budget assumption numbers, and we probably ought to follow
that would
the law,
only be 3 or
especially
4% of the total.
for public, yes.
I mean, it'd be a minor.
Yeah, so why don't we let the staff take out the pre-decisional numbers, which actually don't affect this whole report at all, and then put it on the website.
And then, secondly, I do think the report from Baker, Baker and McKenzie, that again we heard for about 30 or 40 minutes today. I didn't see anything in here. I mean, we're not in a lawsuit. We're not in a criminal case. This is just legal opinion as to how that there are no obstacles to merging the three consolidated entities if that was a decision the board took. And again, let people see it.
Fine.
You know, this is a hot topic in the entities in the building, and we have set the record on being transparent. I mean, we have done things other boards didn't even think about. And it seems to me this is just the logical step to go forward and to share essentially, you know, with other people and the people most impacted, i.e. the contractors and the federal employees, and what we're taking a hard look at doing.
And let me explain for those who weren't in the meeting that this is a report that's been given to us, and what we decided when we got the report was that we're going to think about it. We asked some other questions, and probably in January have some serious time digesting it. Right. That this is not a report about what's going to happen, but this is a report to us, and then we have to decide what is going to happen. So if people do read this report on the website, don't think that this is going to happen. Just know that this is what we're digesting as we make decisions in the next couple of months. And obviously, if it's on the website, we'd appreciate the feedback as we help figure out those decisions. Michael?
Yeah, let me just echo that. I think that in our time on the board here, I've run into a lot of people who work in the building and used to work in the building, and there's a lot of valuable opinion about how some of this could work better, and we'd love to get the feedback after people look at it. So hopefully it's a vehicle on our website to allow folks who think very hard about public diplomacy and international broadcasting to give us their feedback.
Just so long as people don't think that this is a fait accompli, because we spend a lot of time saying it ain't a fait accompli.
Mr. Chairman, you made an excellent point, which maybe our listeners didn't pick up on, but we did decide that we would have a day at a time to be determined where we'll spend a number of hours going over in some detail what has been suggested. We may or may not agree with it, or agree in part and disagree in part.
We may even agree larger to make more consolidation of the last one.
But this is yet to be determined, and we're going to give a thoughtful review by the 9 members of this board as to what's best for international broadcasting.
Mary Jean? Susan?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add I'm all for transparency, and if these documents are going to go on our website, I would ask that a lead-in graph or an explanation of exactly what you just said be in front of it on the website, so it's crystal clear to everyone that these decisions have not been made, and they can take it as they see it.
Excellent point.
For the next. I have another presentation I think that we can quick. Are you ready for that?
I think we're ready.
Okay.
Watch out, it'll be on the web before you finish. Go ahead.
Actually, it's already on the web.
Okay, good.
The BBG submitted its 8th annual Performance and Accountability Report, the PAR, which is on our website, www.bbg.gov. And it was submitted to Congress on November 15th. It's an annual report for the agency. This one's for fiscal year 2011. It provides consolidated financial, general management, internal controls information, as well as performance information. It compares the year-end performance to the goals and targets contained in the budget submission. And before I go too far into the summary, I would like to thank the dedicated efforts of some folks on my staff, Teresa McCaffrey-Beatty, and the financial operations staff, led by by Emelijo Kabaki, as well as all the individual people from the entities who provided information for the completion of the document. They did a fantastic job. In fact, we received some very, very nice compliments from OMB on the quality of our PAR, so we actually did quite a good job this year. The PAR actually report satisfies nine pieces of legislation, so it's a mandated report, and there's lots of good news in it. On the financial end, we received a clean audit opinion. On the performance side, again, it ties us in with the strategic plan, and it talks about the reach, reliability, and understanding measures. And as Bruce mentioned, the highlight of the PAR this year was our audience numbers and the significant increase in the audience numbers, and that's where that actually gets reported. So a job well done organization-wide. So lots of good news to report in this one. Did anybody have any questions?
I think that's great. I mean, I know you're really busy, and I know somehow the ability of this government not to have a budget every week causes you extra work. Yeah. But even as you're doing the extra work, the work you're doing with PAR particularly stands out. I want to commend you and the staff.
Thank you.
Dick, do you want to, Mr. Lobo, do you want to do your IBB report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few items. First, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Andre Mendez, who runs TSI here. There's some good news continuing.
Not transportation safety. We want to make it clear.
That's not transportation safety. Andre, a couple of things you might want to tell about your report to your staff recently and to the whole agency, but also on what's going on in Libya, and maybe if you can share anything about the Korea project.
Absolutely. Let's start with Libya. As you know, we have the transmitter up in Benghazi going full steam. We are now getting ready to ship a new transmitter to Tripoli. We've identified the tower where it's going to be operating. We've customized the transmitter for the particular conditions of the terrain and also the frequency at which it's going to be operating. So we expect that by year's end we will be up in the air and transmitting in Tripoli as well. So we're very much looking forward to that. Regarding the transmitter in Korea, we have gone through a second set of studies of some of the potential exposures associated with placing a high-power transmitter in that particular location. Preliminary report indicates that there is no showstoppers at this point. We're still looking for additional data just to make sure that we cross all the T's and dot all the I's. But at this point, it's looking good. So we expect to get to a final decision over the next couple of weeks, and to then get moving into contract signings with the authorities in South Korea. At that point, we'll begin construction. As you know, the funds have been identified, and that process has been authorized.
And the check cleared.
And the check cleared.
And that's to benefit VOA and RFA, both.
That is correct. That is for VOA and RFA, and it will put a very good quality signal into North Korea. And so we're very much looking forward to that. And it will be under our control, which is always good, from that standpoint. Regarding the report that we put out last week, I am very pleased to share with you that we've made very substantial progress against our 2-year strategic plan, and that as I related to my staff and to the House at large, we have gone from laggards to leaders in terms of our IT infrastructure, and that I expect that by the end of this fiscal year, we will be one of the most advanced IT environments in the federal government.
And so, the highest mountain in Louisiana, I'm not sure.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I do believe that we'll be on par with most corporate environments as well. And so we're moving very aggressively into cloud environments and virtualization, and so we're taking advantage of all the latest technologies because our budgets dictate so. The evidence is overwhelmingly convincing that this is the way that we must proceed, and so we're proceeding apace.
Oh, you really do a good job, Andre. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, sir. That's very kind.
Michael?
So I just wanted to, two things. One is I want to congratulate Andre and his team and Dick for their help as we've gotten our new committee off the ground, the Global Internet Freedom Committee. It has multiple jurisdictions. It touches many parts of the companies here, the IBB. Plus, we're trying to put some energy and focus over the money that the Congress has bestowed upon us, and so that's given you all an extra workload. load, a bunch more bureaucracy to deal with and cut through while trying to be very nimble. So I wanted to thank you, both of you for your leadership, and Ken Berman and his team for your leadership. There's just a lot of moving parts. It's very complicated, and you've already got a very busy plate, as you just reported upon, to deal with to keep the rest of the companies up and running. And so I wanted to thank you all in a public meeting. And then I was hoping to get a little update on South Sudan. I know you've been dealing with some technology issues here, so if you could just give us a little update on that.
Absolutely. We're going back and forth with the embassy now, trying to figure out if placing the transmitter at the embassy would be feasible. From a cost standpoint, it would be optimal. Because it substantially reduces our need to identify funds from other areas, which we don't know if we can at this point. But so we're going back and forth in terms of figuring out what height of tower we can put there, what the base of the tower would be, and if that will fit both within the embassy grounds, which is actually very narrow in the back of the embassy, and also with their plans for those grounds. And so we're trying to go back and forth, and we're waiting for word from the embassy in Juba to see if we can proceed. If we do, then I believe that we have the equipment, identified, and we would proceed apace to get it on the air and going in very short order. So once we get rid of the administrative details associated with that.
Great, thank you. I mean, that's just another example of the kind of battle that we're up against. The Chinese announced in the last month that they were giving the South Sudanese $36 million to do their own radio. And so this is an example of our ingenuity and our cooperation with the State Department and our technical team and the government of South Sudan. Governor McHugh and Perino and I met with them, and they gave us a license. And we're just trying to keep up with them with a fraction of the funding. And so I appreciate the effort that your team's making to make this happen, and we're trying to do more with less, and the partnership with the State Department, because I do think it's one of those roadmaps, particularly in Africa, where we can put some of these towers on properties where the U.S. government's paying for the security and the power, and have the State Department show the willingness to partner with us on these things, to work with the governments to make them happen. It's just impressive to have that kind of coordination. So I just want to thank everybody that's been involved in that.
Just like a second, do you want to add to that?
No, just we agree with that, and we're trying to work very closely in a number of it. We agree with that and have been trying to work very closely in a number of areas and have had a couple of meetings that are moving toward that goal.
And it really, your trip that you and Dana and Susan took keeps paying dividends, and part of the dividend is I'm learning a hell of a lot more about what's going on there, too. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to report that we have received 38 applications by BBG employees for buyouts that we were offering to the agency. The deadline for submitting applications for buyouts has been extended, so we're expecting a few more before year's end. In addition, Governor Ash brought up an issue at the last board meeting, and we're happy to report that we have assigned a number of our senior staff people to start looking into the agency's use of independent contractors. For example, we started by providing flu shots for contractors effective October 19th. And starting next week, as I mentioned at the Governance Committee meeting yesterday, we're going to be conducting an agency-wide census of current contractor usage. We're also going to be creating surveys of both contractors and managers to collect more information on issues of concern regarding this critical part of our workforce. We're going to be reporting on this issue in upcoming board meetings. And in response to another concern by Governor Ash, we're working more closely with the grantees on offering training that's provided by the IBB and BBG staff. And lastly, we have also combined MBN and VOA radio personnel in Cairo, and they're now co-located in the VOA space. VOA has made the necessary space available for MBN personnel in New York and London, and co-location is going to happen in the next few weeks. MBN is awaiting an equipment delivery and technical connection between the bureaus and IBB, and it's going to be facilitated by TSI, and that's all in the works. So thank you, Governor Ash.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lobo, and I think for a number of employees that maybe Christmas comes early this year. Let me thank you for acting on the flu shot issue that Mrs. Fritzie Depew brought to our attention, or my attention, and I shared with the members of the board down in the English language service of the African network. But also the whole contractor issue, which is a very big issue, and you're very wise to recognize and to look into how you include their opinions because in the past, OPM does not survey them as to what they think about anything. But you're looking at ways in which they can be surveyed and participate. What I did, and the federal employees are great folks. The contractors are great folks. What I learned which was new to me, is that a number of the I thought a lot of contractors were just 6-month or 8-month employees and then they're out. And your survey will come up with the facts. But many have been here 14, 18, 20 years, and yet they're still contractors, and which diminishes them from the standpoint of pensions and health benefits and things of that nature. And as you and I discussed yesterday, we had a very good discussion in the government committee and privately over lunch of how we can honor them and salute them. They may or may not be eligible for monetary benefits, but at least a certificate or something that says after 15 years, job well done, or you've excelled in some way. And so we don't have, in effect, two classes of employees. I realize we probably do, but to ameliorate that as best as possible within the law, and to let everyone know that they're appreciated and it means something. I would share with the board, I'm going on December 7th to Greenville, North Carolina. I'm used to Greenville, Tennessee, the home of President Andrew Johnson.
I'm going to Greenville, South Carolina. We can hit all Greenville.
That's a much bigger city. But anyway, Greenville, North Carolina does exist. They actually have an airport, a commercial airport. And I'm going to go see the transmission station there. And I look forward to reporting back to you and meeting with the people that are there. And then last week, or 10 days ago, I went to the, at my own expense for people who are curious about that, to the Cape Verde Islands, which is sort of a destination place. You don't drop in. And visited with the VOA stringer there. And that's a nation of only 500,000 people, but over 13 islands and strategically located in the South Atlantic. But they're doing a great job, and they're in a tough neighborhood with Guinea-Bissau, which is almost a narco state. Yeah. And our embassy doesn't even function there anymore. It's handled out of Senegal, but they provide important service. Secondly, I went to Kosovo on the same trip, and I was extremely impressed by the RFE office there. I went by and visited with them, and I met with Ambassador Chris Dell, who had never been to the RFE office there, even though he's on the third year of his term. But when I told him I was inviting him to come, he immediately said yes, so I'm sure RFE head is looking forward to his visit. Let me assure you, these offices we go to are not plush. They're hard-working offices, usually 3 flights up and no elevator, in, shall we say, modest sections of the community. And these are working offices, and these are also dedicated people. Now, I will say in this case, having met with the VOA stringers as well as RFE, RFE, the cooperation in Kosovo is extremely good, because the head of the VOA and the head of RFE are married to each other. Right. And that may be the only situation in the world where the respective heads in the same city are husband and wife. But that is the case. So I'm told the cooperation on most days is pretty good. And
thank you. And by the way, you're the only person who takes personal vacations that somehow hit Kosovo.
Well, I don't think Cape Verde. I don't think Kosovo would stand out as a tourist destination yet. There's still a lot of NATO troops there.
Now we get to the heart of our program, which is a report from the entity heads. I realize when I was talking about awards, I was thinking of Mr. Manafi, who won the AIB award, which is one of yours, Steve. Mm-hmm. So why don't we start with Steve Korn and the Radio for Europe, Radio Liberty report.
Sure. Every month at RFE, we have an internal panel that selects stories of the month in various categories to recognize exceptional work. And then at year end, we put them all back in a pot and select 5 stories of the year in similar categories. And this year, We held our Story of the Year ceremony on November 8th. Governor Mulhop, Jeff Trimble, and Bruce Sherman, who were in Prague to attend the Sidebar Research Conference, were all able to attend. We had 5 winners, each in its own way impactful and moving. And today I'd like to share very brief clips of 3 of the winners. The first one you'll see is an investigative report by Kajida Ismailova of our Azerbaijani service on the ownership of a major Azeri telecoms company said to be owned by Siemens and other Western companies, but upon further investigation was found to be owned by the daughters of the Azerbaijani president. The second story was the story of an 11-month ordeal of the crew of a Georgian ship that was stranded in Misrata and its harrowing escape from Libya by Teya Abzurzadeh of our Georgian service and Daisy Sindelar from our central newsroom. And the third one was from our Kyrgyz service by Janelle Chitrabayeva, which is a searing portrait of an Uzbek woman who was the victim of rape during last year's ethnic clashes in Osh in Kyrgyzstan. And Janelle's in-depth report received a high commendation by the AIB in London on the next night on November 9th. And I'm also pleased to report, as the chairman just mentioned, that also on November 9th at the AIB Awards, we had a second award in addition to Janelle's. Radio artist Farshid Manafi, who's a host of the popular satire show Pas Farda, was named International Radio Personality of the Year.
Hey.
And in his clip, listen carefully, it's a brief clip of his acceptance speech, and listen carefully to who he dedicates his award to. So if we can roll that.
We've thrown a curveball to the control room folks. Just give us a second, make sure they're on top of this, because we're doing this out of order. We sent the word, but let's see if we've got the right stuff up here.
If not, we're going to end up
There we go.
Dedicate my award to someone, and I ask myself who really needs this recognition. Every day I spend hours to find a way to make people laugh. Naturally, I thought of fellow comedians who do satire, and then suddenly I had it. Someone who is so funny without even trying. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. He is even funnier than me, and he doesn't know it. He has no clue that the world is laughing at him. So I thought I'd dedicate my award to this underappreciated funny man. But in all seriousness, the tragedy is that people of Iran pay the highest cost for his mockery with their lives and their freedom. And I think no one deserves appreciation more than the people of Iran who manage to laugh in the face of this brutal dictatorship while continuing their struggle for freedom. To the people of Iran. Farshid Manafi, Radio Verde.
That was supposed to be the last in the order, so I don't know if we have the first 3 or not. But
give the control room a sec. Pull them up.
Victor, did you?
No, I was just going to say, Mr. Gordon, you might also let them know at the earlier RFE board meeting today that the board voted to give Chairman Mulhop assistance by electing Susan McHugh as the new vice chair of the RFE board, and I think the board chose very wisely. And you're just a heartbeat away now from the chairmanship.
And you may be closer than that.
That's what I used to say when I was mayor. I had a vice mayor and I always said he was just a heartbeat away. He called me every morning to check on my health.
I'm happy to join my colleague here, Dennis. He's done a remarkable job as chair, and I'm looking forward to helping him out.
And then secondly, let me say that I hope, and it has to be determined, that we will meet in 2012 in Prague and have a chance to personally see RFE employees and people and thank them for what they're doing, and because I think every other year we ought to make it there.
And by the way, everybody just praised Dennis and Steve. There was some 6 or 8 months of difficult transition. The people at RFE keep winning awards. They keep doing their work. And I know Dennis went through a lot to try to hold things together and all, but thanks to everybody who's now helped pull this together.
I'm told
Dennis,
we have the other clips ready to go.
Okay, we quit vamping and go to the video stage.
In her winning report, Khadija Ismailova investigated the true ownership of Azerbaijan's telecom monopoly, purportedly owned by Siemens and other Western companies. In truth, it belongs to the president's 2 daughters.
Actually, the story had a great impact because after we published the story disclosing ownership of Azer phone company, the government has taken steps to end monopoly of this company in 3G services. Khadija Ismailova, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Azerbaijani service.
A Georgian ship found itself stranded in the Libyan port of Misrata just as the revolution was breaking out there. The crew, short of food, water, and medicine for months, contacted RFERL's Georgian service for help. The service then began exclusive coverage of their plight and dramatic escape.
Once we broke the story, it was picked up by other media, but the sailors would talk only to us. We got diplomats involved and managed to get them a little help every now and then, until the captain called us to say that after 11 miserable months they had succeeded in escaping from Libya. With no equipment they navigated their way home by the stars. Our service still gets messages of "We love you" and "Thank you." Marina Vashakmadze, RFERL's Georgia service.
Janil Chiturbayeva's The Invisible Women of Osh is a searing portrait of Camilla, a victim of rape during last year's ethnic clashes between Uzbeks and Kyrgyz in the city of Osh. No local media covered this terrible aspect of the clashes.
My reporting caused very strong reaction from our listeners and readers. Many expressed profound sympathy and regret for the conflict and victims, but there were numerous threats, accusations of disloyalty for the Kyrgyz nation. Our editor was threatened to have his eyes put out, and some even complained that we were using an Uzbek tune, music of now silenced minority. Janil Chiturbayeva, Radio Azatlık.
That's my report.
That's great. Best to everybody over there in Prague, and congratulations.
Let me just add, the section there on the Azerbaijani case certainly resonates with me, because that's a government that also took RFE off the government airwaves. We're on shortwave, which of course has substantially reduced our listenership. I went there in June and met with government leaders, as well as visited again the RFE office, and I might say they had a great ceremony. Over 150 people jammed into a small room in a modest section of Baku. But they do great work, and the only good news is the government hadn't closed down the RFE office, and they are allowed to operate, although they were certainly followed. On the other hand, that's the country where you, Mr. Chairman, received a letter from the prisoner that had been in prison for 4 years because he'd written politically incorrect and inconvenient articles about the president of Azerbaijan. But
and he was listening to RFE.
What?
And he was listening to RFE.
Yes, and he listened to it while he was somehow was able to hear it while he was in prison, and he knew that there were people on the outside. And frankly, I think it was the pressure that the international community raised that resulted in the president pardoning him and letting him out. And you'd think he might want to leave the country and just not go back for a while, but he is so dedicated and so committed and patriotic that he plans to continue his efforts in Azerbaijan, well understanding the not just risk, I would say likelihood of re-imprisonment under the current regime.
Thank you. Let's go to Carlos. Go back into order into the Office of Cuba Broadcasting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Carlos Garcia.
Today is a year and 3 days since I stepped into the Martis in Miami.
And Castro is still in power.
Yeah, but he's weaker. Okay. He's weaker. Substantially weaker, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I can feel it.
Want to make sure you're doing your job.
Bruce Sherman asked me a question on Monday night while we were preparing his presentation about what has me jazzed up in what new project we have now that has me jazzed up, and that I couldn't answer that accurately because I'm really excited about all the things that are going on in the Martis. I'm excited about the opportunities and the potential that we have to continue to allow the free flow of information into the island. We are going to build on our accomplishments of last year and going to change a lot of the way our TV looks. We hope that by the calendar year of next year, right, next 2000,
12. We will have access to over 1 million souls on the island through email and text messages. We hope that within 30 days we should be close to 750,000 reach. That's not counting the feedback that we're getting on radio and on TV. We are actually been successful delivering the TV signal or the TV content through non-traditional means. A gentleman called us 2 weeks ago and told us that he hadn't received Game 6 and 7 of the World Series, and he got the other one. So we had a customer complaint that we had to fix right away.
Complain about the Cardinals or what?
He just didn't. He was missing 2 games, and he was upset about it. So we solved that already. Having said that, I have a tape to show of our latest reporting from the previous board, and I want to thank the IBB and the folks here in Washington for all the support that they given us at the Martis this last year. It's really humbling, everything that's going on. And I do believe, Mr. Chairman, that Fidel Castro is weaker today than a year ago.
And Raul?
Let me
Raul is even weaker.
Okay.
Mr. Garcia, if this board decides to change its visit to your office in Miami from March to April, I don't know if they will, does that present a problem?
Not at all. We'll always welcome you.
All right.
March is better.
Whatever time of the year.
Well, whenever you want to come down, you're more than welcome.
But there are things going on here in Washington in March too. So
understood. You're welcome anytime you want to come. So I got my presentation. Yes, please. Yes, please. Roll the tape. Folks, roll the DVD. Thank you.
Turbas que según los disidentes son organizadas por la seguridad del Estado impidieron que las damas de blanco marcharan este sábado en honor a la Virgen de las Mercedes.
There's been an increase in the level of repression against members of one of Cuba's leading opposition groups, the Ladies in White, and now with the recent death of the group's founder, Laura Pollán, it's made our job of informing the Cuban population of the struggle by dissidents and opposition groups much more urgent. One of our best resources that we have is the growing community of bloggers on the island.
We found out about her death because Joanny Sanchez sent a text message via her Twitter, and like that we knew almost immediately, and we could give the news to the rest of the world and the Cubans inside the island.
Después de conocer la muerte de Laura Pollán y confirmar la noticia, se la transmitimos al pueblo de Cuba.
Claro, a través de un programa especial donde nos nutrimos con los propios disidentes dentro de Cuba. A través de los teléfonos celulares se comunicaron con nosotros y al mismo tiempo ellos iban dando sus impresiones, lo que iba sucediendo dentro de Cuba. Además de darnos la noticia, ellos también reaccionaban a la muerte de Laura Pollán.
The amount of censorship that the people of Cuba experience, it is not just limited to the events of the island. It extends to international news as well. We traveled to Nicaragua in November for the closely scrutinized presidential elections and were able to do reports for both radio and television Marti. Our goal was to tell the truth behind the electoral process in that country. Nicaragua is a nation with a history of social and political unrest, its leaders having shared a close relationship with Cuba. This was an opportunity for Nicaraguans to really choose their country's future, to openly voice their concerns. According to international observers with the Organization of American States and the European nation, there were many irregularities in the process, casting the shadow of fraud over these elections.
People in Cuba and we here at Marti now have access to different communication tools, and social media is definitely one of them. We recently held our first Twitter Summit, an event which was broadcast live on Radio Marti, accompanied with a real-time Twitter feed. Our weekly newsletter, El Pitirre, is going out to over 233,000 validated email addresses and is heavily promoted on our radio, internet, and television platforms.
Noticias, deportes, información
lo encuentra en El Pitirre, el boletín informativo digital para toda Cuba. Suscríbase gratis ahora mismo enviándonos un correo electrónico a la siguiente dirección: elpitirreeditor@gmail.com.
96,000 text messages are reaching mobile phones in Cuba on a monthly basis.
Esta es Radio Martí, transmitiendo día y noche para Cuba y todo el Caribe, libre de censura. Radio Martí.
Radio Martí is also getting a share of the love with a series of interstitials informing Cuban viewers with specific instructions on how to tune in to Radio Martí on shortwave frequencies.
Los radios de onda corta, también conocidos como shortwave o high frequency, se usan para escuchar estaciones internacionales.
We here at Martí are truly multi-platform, using new technology to complement our traditional forms of communication with the Cuban people.
This is a log of the daily calls I make to Cuba, and this is just the calls made in these 2 particular days.
The responsiveness of the internet allows us to report events on Cuba in real time. Detentions, protests, meetings of opposition groups. We not only covered extensively the death of Laura Pollán, but other newsworthy events that are censored in Cuba, like the Arab Spring and the capture of Muammar Gaddafi. We are especially reaching out to this youth population that is growing in Cuba, that is discontent with the lack of civil liberties. We especially let them know about human rights organizations and opposition groups that are growing every day in every corner of the island.
We know the value of our mission here at Martí, and we take pride in letting our local community know about what we do here. One of our outreach programs involves the different high school journalism students who come and tour our facility. It's a great way for them to see an operation hands-on, to interact with our radio and television staff, and it also reinforces awareness in these students of important events that impact not just in Cuba, but in our whole hemisphere.
That's our report, Mr. Chairman.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any comments? David Ensor, Voice of America.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to tell you about 2 things. First of all, just briefly, my first foreign trip, which went to Pakistan and to India. In Pakistan, I got a chance to talk to more than a dozen different Pakistani broadcasters, to watch a lot of Pakistani television, including our program on Geo, and to talk to people at the embassy, the ambassador, and to some senior people, some of the ministers in the Pakistani government. Long story short, we're reaching a lot of we're reaching an important audience in Pakistan. Obviously, it's a key country for the United States, but I think we can do better. And we're going to be working in the coming weeks and months to come up with some innovative ways. We'd like to try to reach a younger audience if we can. So we're going to experiment a little bit and see if we can't reach some different kinds of audiences in Pakistan. It's a key country for us. And then in India, I was honored to lead the delegation that attended the Asian Pacific Broadcasting Union meeting. And this was a chance to meet a lot of people in one hotel from all over Asia who were involved in broadcasting. Good chance to meet Dr. Kim, the new incoming president of the ABU from Korea, and have a good conversation with him. We'll be able to cooperate very well. But also to highlight the issue of satellite uplink jamming by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And we delivered a letter to the council of the ABU, suggesting as an affiliate member that they might want to talk about this. The ABU is a talking shop basically of broadcasters, and this uplink jamming is interference in legitimate commercial activities by a state which in fact takes advantage of satellites while jamming them when it wishes to. So I think we had a chance to bring that issue to the front. It was the corridor talk, should we say, of the ABU, and I think that was useful, sir. That segues me to the second thing I want to tell you about, which was the interview that our comedy show Parasite had with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And so Kambiz Husseini got a chance to sit down with the Secretary. Here's a short clip.
So, Madam Secretary, thank you for taking time to answer our audience's questions. We were supposed to do this way earlier. We assume you were too busy taking down dictators since you were gone. I think 4 or 5 dictators are gone too.
Isn't that good news for the people that they had oppressed for so many years?
I love that. I love that. But I have many questions from our audience. I'm going to ask my question first, and then we'll.
That's only fair. You get to do that.
And then we go to our audience question. Do you believe the Islamic Republic of Iran is a dictatorship?
I do. I believe the regime is a dictatorship, and I think it's becoming even more of one. In fact, I think it is moving toward being a military dictatorship. I heard recently the idea that there wouldn't even be an elected president, that the system would be changed. There is a great deal of sadness on my part when I look at the strength and resilience of the Iranian people, the creativity, the intellect, the history and culture, and see the very narrow-minded and unfortunately oppressive regime that is trying to control what the Iranian people do.
And to control what the Iranian people know and what they're able to perceive. The Secretary went on to use the term electronic curtain and compare the situation now that we and other broadcasters face trying to reach the Iranians with the situation that the Soviet Union created with its Iron Curtain. So I think it was a very useful, it was good to hear her say that, and it's something we can build on and work on in the coming months. That's my report, sir.
She is really. Go ahead, Victor.
No, I was going to say, first of all, Mr. Enter, I want to express appreciation for the letter you delivered to the Asian Pacific conference there in Delhi. As I said earlier, I hope Tish King takes it and puts it on our website and turns it in. To me, it's a hard news article item, and it ought to be highlighted as much as possible. Secondly, you didn't mention it, but this is our last board meeting for the year 2011. And the first board meeting for 2012 will mark the 70th anniversary of Voice of America. In fact, there's a pre-party for the Voice of China, broadcasting to China. I guess Congressman Rohrbacher is hosting December 6th up on the Hill. But it's my understanding you're going to do a lot throughout the year as the head of Voice of America to highlight 70 years of progress and 70 years of service in bringing news and objectivity and the truth to parts of the world that unfortunately have governments that diminish that. And I want to wish you well, and I'm just 4 years short of being 70, and so I'm looking forward to what I'm going to look at in 4 years. But look forward to celebrating with you.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. We're going to put banners on you when you turn 70. Don't worry.
My brother's already there, so he's told me.
Okay, what it's like.
As long as they don't hang them from the building like VOA is going to do with their banners, right?
I won't go there. Radio Free Asia, Libby Lou.
Hi. Thank you. Tim is going to hook us up because I wanted to tell you about our launching of our new special documentary project. This was made by the same documentary crew that made the award-winning Mekong Diaries, you might recall from last year. This project cuts across all our language services and deals with the terrible topic of human trafficking, for which we think that there's never enough journalistic focus, but we tried to look at non-sexual exploitation aspects of human trafficking to kind of focus on the human aspect of it. And on your CD cards that I gave you last time we had an RFA board meeting, I gave you the first 2 installments, which were on the child soldiers in Burma and the trafficking slave labor from Burmese refugee camps in Thailand. Since then, we have done a piece on mothers of North Korea. And now we are taking you to the hub page, which is strangely distorted in colors. Okay, now it looks good. This features our first 4 videos, and obviously we have more installments to come. The subject is really sobering, like so much of what we do. But we also launched a discussion site, and that allows different voices to be heard on the issue, and maybe by raising awareness across borders, we can start bringing about a real solution that has impact. Our Facebook page that's attached to it invites people to connect and work together to solve these problems. So basically, we report on the issue from the ground, and we allow listeners and readers to provide ideas and to interact and find each other. So please take a moment, literally it's less than a minute, to watch the opening of this video. This is our newest piece, and it's about the kidnapping of children to be trafficked into the network of illegal brick kilns throughout China. So they just snatch these children and move them around.
Henan in Shenzhou, and a pall of pollution smothers the capital city, attesting to the scale of the province's industrial sector. In a backstreet suburb, impoverished army veteran Mr. Miao and his wife are among an estimated 5,000 parents in this province alone who believe that their son has been trafficked and is enslaved in one of Henan's many brick and coal factories.
我儿子失踪以后，我到处在郑州去找，像饭店啊、洗浴中心啊，各方面看是不是在哪上班嘞，经常去找，另外到处贴随身启事，是不是？去找都没效果。
我要见人是要。
We're moving ahead to show you more of his story, because we did stories of 4 different parents that spend their whole lives looking for their children. So this is the follow-up on his story.
2007年，
为了找孩子，反正老家的房子也卖，是不是？有时走上一路几个钱出去找孩子，反正容易，是这个。
当时孩子找不到我感觉到就没法再活下去了。
In this particular piece, we did go with this woman that you just saw who lost a very young child, and went to the police station with her and spent hours and hours and days trying to convince them to go look for her child, because she saw a picture of her son in a raiding photo. And
what photo?
Like every now and then they will raid these illegal
raiding, yeah.
And in the news flash, she saw her son, who she hadn't seen in ages. But when they got to the brick kiln, it was recently vacated. I mean, the beds were still unmade, the food was still there, and that's what happens.
Yeah. No, sorry, there were subtitles saying exactly what you were saying.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know we were going to show that. Okay, you see how uncoordinated we are.
Yes, I can play with it.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to give you a taste of it. You have the first 2 installments on your RFA credit card drive, and these people are incredible documentarists. We used them from when we met them at the National Geographic, and they said that the experiences they had doing this particular series really were the worst they've ever seen. I mean, it's really bad. So.
Question.
Sure.
On trafficking, it's an issue I've worked a little bit on. I'm just wondering if you, for distribution purposes, do you work with the NGOs that are on the ground that are really active on this, and some of them are especially good and have big audiences. Do you work to get it to them so they can help us distribute this?
We do once they're out of the country, because our teams, they go in-country, and it's very dangerous, obviously, what they do, but they work with in-country networks to get to the parents to talk to them, and once the whole thing is done and produced, then we send it out to everyone and anyone who can use it. So.
Wow.
Let me ask Ms. Liu. Of course, today came out the rather phenomenal announcement that Secretary Clinton will make the first visit of a Secretary of State or any high-level official in almost half a century to Burma. And I think the President announced the visit will be in early December. Do you have any read on, obviously something's going on in Burma that has caused a massive change in State Department policy, and what does that impact potentially for Radio Free Asia and the ability to get news into what has been a repressive regime in the past, but seems to be sending a few signals of possible change?
Well, we talked about this a couple months ago in the BBG meeting, and we are seeing a remarkable breakthrough. We had the exclusive interview with basically the censor czar of Burma, I think in the last month, where he said, as far as he's concerned, he wants to abolish censorship in Burma. And today we know that rfa.org in Burmese is accessible anywhere in Burma. And our shortwave is clear. They're not doing any blocking now, so it's very positive. There's positive signs all over the place, and it's building momentum. I think that the important thing is that people have to be very smart about how they, keep stepping forward, because a lot of people's rice bowls are going to break over this freedom, and so they have to take it carefully. But signs are really good. I'm very thrilled about that. And
well, let me say,
just
not only as vice chair of the RFA board, but also a person who 18 years ago, as a citizen and tourist, visited Burma. It's a wonderful country, wonderful people, with a regime at that time that was pretty dreadful, and of course the work of Aung Suu Kyi, who is truly a heroine for all ages. And I was glad to see our president spoke with her over 20 minutes from Air Force One about whether or not she agreed with Secretary Clinton making a visit, which she did. And she clearly, this is a lady whose husband died in another country, and she couldn't attend the funeral of her own husband because of fear that she wouldn't be allowed to return, which probably was a legitimate fear on her part. And I remember when I was in Burma, I broke away from my guard to visit her house. Minder, I should say, wasn't a guard, which is on the main lake there in Rangoon. And it was interesting to watch the police photo everyone, including me. I guess my picture's in a file somewhere, but I've aged a lot in 18 years.
Oh, good. Well, we want that picture, and we'll put that on the website, too, as an interest of full disclosure that you like on our website. Thank you. No, sorry. I was going to say thank you, Libby, but I assume you have a question for Libby, or?
No, I was just going to congratulate RFA. Last night they had their 15th anniversary potluck, and many of us were there, members and the senior staff, and congratulations. It was a lot of energy and a lot of excitement and a lot of food. It probably could feed people for a week there, but everyone had a great time, and I want to congratulate them on 15 great years, and thanks for hosting all of us.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Brian, Middle East.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am also pleased to announce that last week Al Hurra won the Association of International Broadcasters People's Choice Award. The topic this year was the coverage of the democratic uprising in the Middle East, and Al Hurra's coverage of the Egyptian January 25th revolution was the winner. We go ahead and
that's huge.
Yeah, it's the first major award that Al Hurra has won, international award. So we were quite excited about it. It was a very competitive environment. We had all
Pretty
the
big
other
story, too.
International broadcasters, including Al Jazeera English, were nominated. So we thought it meant a lot. It meant a lot to our staff. It was a team coverage. It was a combination of the news department and Al-Yum, how they worked together over the course of about a 6-week period. So we're really excited about it. If you go ahead and run it. Someone has to wake them up back there.
It was the powerful sound of liberation that gave birth to possibility in Egypt. Possibility that could change a nation and take the seeds of a movement and grow it into revolution. From the first cries for freedom to the promise of real democracy, Al-Hurra was there to capture it all. As one of the Middle East's most important stories unfolded, Al-Hurra proved to be what the domestic press and state TV were not. A trusted source of news for the people of Egypt and the region. Al-Hurra delivered live first-hand accounts from the street, important reaction from the government, gave voice to the opposition, and reported the all-important perspective from the United States. It's the type of free reporting that only Al-Hurra can offer.
America will continue to do everything that we can to support an orderly and genuine transition to democracy in Egypt.
The difference is clear, and viewers have responded via email and Facebook with contributions to Al-Hurra newscasts and reaction to the coverage. And when the peaceful demonstrations turned violent, Al-Hurra was targeted, the correspondents threatened. Refusing to be intimidated, Al-Hurra's coverage never stopped. Because at Al-Hurra, it is not just a broadcast, it's a mission, a promise to bring accurate and objective news and information to the people of Egypt and the region.
Wow.
Just so you know, the work goes on. November 25th is the Moroccan election. November 28th is the Egyptian election, the first round of multi-part elections. So this is only the beginning, we hope, of continued coverage of the democratic movement throughout the Middle East.
Well, you're doing a hell of a lot better than Carlos.
We got rid of a couple of dictators.
Let me say, Brian, I'm hopeful in 2012 this board will actually get out to MBN for holding one of its board meetings, just as we go to OCB and to RFA and perhaps back to Prague. And I look forward to coming at either, I think, the 14th of December and spending part of the day and just going through. We had an introduction when we all became members, but to get back and spend more quality time. But I think it's important we get out to Springfield, Virginia, and actually see firsthand what we're doing. So hopefully it will happen in one of the,
we look forward to
one of the board meetings we have.
Would benefit from it.
Put Victor on the air the way you did to me. So
Okay.
You know, at the beginning of this meeting, I asked Bruce about the audience numbers and why they went up. There can be a whole lot of explanations, but the best explanation is what we've just seen on the screen and heard from you all, that the quality of journalism in a time of global change has never been more important. And it truly is important to our audiences worldwide. And I think we've just seen in these reports why our audience numbers are going up. So on behalf of everybody else, unless there's further business, I want to thank you. We will meet again January 12th and 13th. I will probably be consulting with everybody, but I think it's a good working assumption that in that 2-day period, because I've just canceled a trip that was supposed to be around then, is when we should probably find a morning or afternoon to do a deep dive. We'll call it the Deloitte deep dive, the 3D. But if that's not convenient, we'll find some other time. But I think that should be our working assumption. As we do the Deloitte deep dive, it should involve, I think, entity heads, and I'll also let Dick figure out, who else. I mean, we don't want to make it into something that we need a stadium for, because we want it to be a real honest-to-God working session. But we'll try to figure it out. Ann, thank you for your wonderful service, and knowing the way the Senate acts. Sorry?
She'll be here in January.
Yeah, I was going to say, knowing the way the Senate acts, we'll see you January 12th.
That would be so quick.
Yeah.
It has that feel to it.
Let me just say, Mr. Chairman, in addition to what Governor McHugh suggested in terms of the Deloitte report and the legal thing going on the website with the caution this hadn't been adopted, it's not policy at this point, I think it also would be good to, in effect, solicit comments and put in there if someone has a reaction they want to share with the board, and you'd have to say, here's the email to send it to. I don't know what address you want to use, but again, there may be people who, after reading it, think it's wonderful, think it's not so wonderful, or somewhere in between.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me add one.
And put that on our website where you could respond. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just signed a letter based on previous suggestions to send out our entire strategic report to all people who've ever served on the broadcasting board. We might as well I'm sorry, it's so late in the afternoon I can't think of the word. We might as well send the Deloitte report as well, if that works for everybody. So that previous board members both can give us feedback, but also want to say, where the hell did this come from? And I almost had a motion for adjournment, but now
just to note, Mr. Chairman, that the board has authorized the bbgstrategy.com site, which is set up. It's operational. We're getting a number of visits every single day to that site. It's the place where we're providing additional information on strategy and are taking people's feedback.
Cool. Great. Yes, Paul.
Just a bit of housekeeping. You were asked at the outset of the meeting for us to write a resolution on. Should I read this out?
No, that's all right. I've already shown it to Victor. I think it's basically the resolution about the government of the People's Republic of China failed to issue visas to Voice of America journalists, and basically the board intends to enlist the support and cooperation of the State Department. The board calls on China to issue the visas. I think it expresses well, and Victor said it expressed well what we said, so thank you very much, Paul, and consider that the motion we adopted. All in favor? That was a motion for adjournment.
Yeah, to adopt that resolution. Aye.
No. Talking about adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas.
And thank you for everybody for guiding us through a long day that started at 5 a.m. in New Orleans.
Is that where you work?
Yeah.
Do you have a book appearance?
No.